Yo, what is going on, guys? It is boy Nick here, back again with a brand new video today. We're going to be continuing my series, which I review every single Marvel Cinematic Universe film up to the release of Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. Today we're going to be reviewing Black Widow, which is the first movie in Phase 4. So Black Widow is directed by Kate Shortland and stars people that I'm going to go through individually. Of course, Black Widow stars Scarlett Johansson as Natasha Romanoff for Black Widow. She gives a really good performance in the movie, in my opinion. Not necessarily her best as the character, but still some pretty good performances. I think we get some good stuff out of her, so she does a great job. However, in my opinion, the best performance in this movie is the introduction of Florence Pugh as Yelena. She steals the show, in my opinion. I thought she was excellent in the film. Absolutely my favorite part of the movie was Florence Pugh as Yelena. She does an amazing job in this film. I think she was like the sole, she was the scene stealer, the show stealer of this film, but she was like the sole thing about that film where it's like, yes, that was the best thing about this movie. David Harbour was also really good as the Red Guardian. He provides a great sense of comic relief. There are a few moments where it may feel like he is a bit much, but he's really fun. He kind of reminds me of what they did with Thor Bowski in Avengers Endgame, you know, where he's like funny and silly, but he's also like a really important character and has a great superhero style to him, so it was cool to see him there. He was a lot of fun. And also I thought Rachel Weisz was also pretty good as the mother, Melina. We don't see her all too much, but we get some really nice moments out of her and Black Widow and some other people, and so it was cool to see that kind of family dynamic go down. If you guys hear barking outside, I'm sorry, my dogs are going crazy. So I also really liked about this movie I thought the film was really well shot and choreographed, especially with the action sequences. They felt like action sequences out of a spy movie. I thought they were really exciting to watch. I thought the choreography and the camera work with them was really well done. I like the use of colors that they use with it. And what's interesting is that I first saw this movie when it came out on Disney Plus in 2021, and I hadn't seen it again until like last week, and so I watched it there, and I watched it with the enhanced IMAX feature on Disney Plus, and the sequences are even better on IMAX, and I thought the sequences are really good. There's some moments where the action does make the movie feel a little bit slow at times. It does get kind of exhausting, but for the most part I really like the action sequences of this movie. I think they look even better on the IMAX enhanced features. As I said, I really like the family dynamic with this movie. I think this movie has a really good family dynamic, or I should say a pretty good family dynamic. I don't think it's perfect. I think there's some things about it that maybe could have been ironed out a little bit better, but it was cool to meet Natasha's family and to see that whole thing go on there. And I thought they all worked well as a family, so I liked that part about the movie. Like I said, this is also a movie that has some good humor in it. It's not necessarily like a super funny Guardians of the Galaxy type movie, but it has some great humor moments in it. I like the fact that it has that humor in it so that the film doesn't just feel so, overly serious. I think that was a great part of the film. Now, although I do like Black Widow, unfortunately I do have some flaws with the movie, a handful of them that I didn't even realize the first time I watched it, that I'm going to go through right now. But this is still a movie that I would recommend, but I'm just going to go through some of the things I thought could have been better. I wrote down how this movie isn't really as interesting of a Black Widow movie as it should have been, and it didn't really feel like it mattered a whole lot. When I first saw this movie, when it came out, I actually really enjoyed it, and I watched it recently, and I still really enjoyed it, but I didn't enjoy it as much as I did the first time, and it's not that I don't like the movie. In fact, I still mostly like it. It's just that as a Black Widow story, it kind of felt like a filler story. It didn't feel like it did a whole lot. If you guys don't know, this movie came out after Avengers Endgame, which, spoiler alert for Avengers Endgame, Black Widow dies in that movie. And this was like, not necessarily the origin story of that, but this is kind of like what happened to her before that, which was in between, I believe this takes place after Civil War, or before Civil, no, I think it's after Civil War and before Infinity War. I believe that's where it takes place. And it kind of just felt filler to me. I mean, I know we're supposed to understand what happened with her during that time and what it's going to mean for the future of the MCU, and I appreciate that, but as a Black Widow movie, it just didn't really feel like a Black Widow movie should have felt. Kind of like the best way to describe it is with Batman Returns. Batman Returns is a really good movie, but the way I kind of feel about it is that it doesn't really feel all that much like a Batman movie. It feels kind of more like a Tim Burton movie about Batman. That's kind of what this movie feels like. This movie feels like, it doesn't really feel like a Black Widow movie. It feels like a spy movie about Black Widow, or just a generic superhero movie about Black Widow. It didn't really feel like a Black Widow movie should have felt. That's kind of like the biggest issue I have with it. Yeah, it felt kind of filler. It didn't really feel like a whole lot mattered, unfortunately. And I also wrote down a few moments of CGI aren't very good. Now, for the most part, the CGI in this movie is pretty consistent. The whole sky falling sequence, I know people like to make fun of it. I actually think it's a very well done action sequences with all the stuff falling out of the sky, but there's a few frames where the CGI just does not work. That's not the entirety of the scene. There's a whole lot of sequences where stuff's falling that actually looks really good, kind of like the stuff that was in Iron Man 3 with the plane sequence there. But there's some frames where it just doesn't work for me, and it kind of takes me out of it a little bit. So unfortunately that is there, but for the most part, I think the CGI is pretty consistent. It's just there's a few scenes where it doesn't work, unfortunately. Something else that was kind of a big letdown for me was that although Olga Kurilenko, I hope I'm saying that right, I'm probably not, although she gives a fine performance as Taskmaster, Taskmaster is not a very memorable villain. She's not necessarily a bad villain, she's just not very memorable. She's kind of used as like as a device for the actual main villain, and that main villain is kind of forgettable. And I know that villains being forgettable has unfortunately become a cliche within the MCU. It's just that I felt like this one shouldn't have had a forgettable villain, considering it's a Black Widow movie, which we had been wanting since Iron Man 2. And so the fact that it has a forgettable villain frustrates me a little bit. I mean, it doesn't make me hate the movie or anything like that, but it's just, it could have been better. They could have had a better villain there. And something else I wrote is that even though I think the Red Room scenes are gorgeous, I think they look really nice. I like the use of colors and the way the shots are set up. And I think the sequences are very nice visually. The story didn't make the Red Room sequence feel earned. It kind of just felt like, here's what we're building up to, and here it is. But it didn't really feel like there was that emotional tension that we needed to go up there. Like, I still like the Red Room stuff a lot. I just don't think it was as good as it could have been, unfortunately. I thought the story was lacking. That's like the main issue with this movie. This movie doesn't really feel like a great Black Widow story. It just kind of feels like a pretty good spy movie. And something I did write in the flaws, which was something on my part, is that I said that false expectations might have affected my viewing. So you might wonder, how did I go from really liking it to still liking it, just not as much? I think the thing is, when it came out, we had not had an MCU movie. Hey guys, it's Editing Nick here, and you guys might notice that the thing just cut off randomly. It's because I had a memory card issue with my camera, which you're also going to see explained in the next frame. I just want to get on here real quick and talk about some footage that got left out where I said that how false expectations might have affected my viewing of the film, because when Black Widow initially came out, it was the first Marvel movie that we had had in 2 years since Spider-Man Far From Home. And so I think that maybe when it came out, I was a little bit more just like, oh cool, we got a new Marvel movie, and I wasn't really seeing the issues with it that I do see now in retrospect. So I think that might have just affected my viewing of it. But yeah, that's really it. That's not really a whole lot to go off of. I just think it was important to talk about how that might have affected my viewing of it upon first view. And something that you might notice in the next frames, I said I was talking about the post-credit scene. It's because before my thing stopped recording, I was talking about spoilers in the film, where I was just talking about the post-credit scene, but thankfully I talk all about it in the next frame. So yeah, I just want to hop on here real quick and explain this very odd edit. Alright, so my camera angle looks switched up because I had some SD card footage stuff that I had to take care of, which I'm not going to go into. But what I was saying, though, with the spoilers was the post-credit scene in this film, where we see Yelena at the grave with Julia Louis-Dreyfus's character. I forget her name, but she's a character that we meet previously in Falcon and the Winter Soldier, and she gives her intel on what happened with Natasha in Avengers Endgame, which is that Natasha sacrificed herself, and Clint Barton was the one who made it out of there with the Soul Stone. And so I think it's a really cool post-credit scene, because it clearly sets up what we're going to see in the Hawkeye series, which I'm not going to go into that because that's a separate video for a separate time, but it is really cool to kind of see that setup there of Yelena having some vengeful thoughts against Hawkeye, because from her perspective, Hawkeye murdered her sister, when in actuality the sister sacrificed herself so that Hawkeye could live. So it's a really interesting dynamic, but I just think that little post-credit scene's cool. I just want to talk about that real quick. So all in all, Black Widow's a good movie. It's not a great movie. I wrote down that it's not a great Black Widow movie, but it does make for a great spy action thriller. And so for that reason, I still really like Black Widow. I just think the story could have been a lot better. I'm giving it an overall rating of an 8.4 out of 10. I wish I could give it an 8.5, but the reason it drops down a point is because, unfortunately, the story was just not as good as it could have been, but it's still relatively entertaining, so I give it an 8.4 out of 10, and I'm going to give it an overall grade of a B+. And the only other Marvel movie I've given a B+ is Guardians Volume 2. And I kind of give that one a B+ because like it's good. It's not as good as the first Guardians. I give this one a B+ because it's a great spy action thriller. It's not a great Black Widow movie. But in the end, Black Widow is still a pretty good movie. I think it's definitely overhated. It's one that I enjoy. It's just unfortunately I don't enjoy it as much as I first did, but I still relatively like it. So that was my review for Black Widow. Hope you guys enjoyed the review. Make sure that you tune into my channel just a few more days to watch my review of the next movie in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings. And something else that I want to clarify before I end the video is the fact that, did you guys notice I didn't post anything this past week? And that's because a week ago from today, which was last Wednesday, I had surgery to remove my wisdom teeth, and so I was swollen and I was recovering from surgery and I couldn't talk very well. So I didn't record this whole week, but today is Wednesday the 22nd, so I am recording these videos now. And so I'm glad to be back doing this. Something else you might notice, I keep saying up to the release of Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania. Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania has actually already been out for almost a week now. I still haven't seen it yet because of recovering from surgery. I'm hopefully going to go see it this weekend. And so hopefully you guys will see a video of me doing that early next week. I'm sorry I couldn't get it out to y'all last week. I wish I could have, but I couldn't have. And because I still haven't seen it, please be respectful and don't spoil Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania in the comments below. Don't worry, you guys are still going to see my review for the rest of Phase 4, so I just want to get that out the way. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. Make sure you hit the like button, hit the subscribe, hit the notification bell, leave a comment down below letting me know what you thought. And yeah, it's been it. Peace.